In about 80% of stalking cases, the perpetrator doesn't actually start by, like, breaking a window or picking a lock.
Right, they start way smaller than that.
Exactly. They start by leaving a gift or creating this really subtle, almost invisible connection because, a psychological invasion it's just much, much harder to report to the authorities than a shattered deadbolt.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't arrest a feeling of being watched.
You really can't. And you definitely can't build a criminal case around a jacket that was supposedly just forgotten on a chair.
Right, which happens all the time in these scenarios.
So I want you to just imagine this. You're
Yeah.
sitting alone in your bedroom, right? The house is completely silent. You're surrounded by the physical artifacts of your daily life, and you breathe this massive, shuddering sigh of relief because you are absolutely certain you've just, like, narrowly escaped a life-ruining criminal investigation.
The coast is clear.
The coast is clear, the danger has passed,
Hmm.
and then the screen of your phone just lights up in the dark.
Oh, man. That feeling of dread.
It's the worst. You look down, and it's a photo sent from an unknown number. But here's the thing, it's not a generic threat. It's a literal picture taken from inside the local police interrogation room.
Showing the exact criminal suspects you thought you just got away from.
Exactly.
The terror of that moment, it isn't just about the visual information in the photograph. It's the sudden realization that the very concept of sanctuary has been totally weaponized against you.
Yeah, that's perfectly put.
Because the precise second you believe the danger has passed, your cognitive defense is lower. And then you are shown indisputable proof that the threat isn't just, present in your life. It's embedded within the institutions designed to protect you.
Right. It has eyes inside the most secure, restricted rooms in the city.
Precisely.
And that is the exact foundation we are building on today. So, welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is entirely focused on a really highly analyzed excerpt from the investigative records of the fruit salad adventures, spilling the beans and the juice.
Such a dense text to go through.
It really is. We are forensically examining the rapidly escalating situations surrounding our central figure, Strawberina. And our primary objective here is to decode the clues regarding the identity, the systemic motives, and the deeply disturbing methodologies of this mysterious entity who refers to themselves as the guardian angel in blue.
Yeah, the transition from digital surveillance to physical intimidation in this case is, well, it's textbook, but it's terrifying. We're looking at how a person's reality can be systematically dismantled without a single finger being laid on them.
It's wild.
Huh.
Have you ever felt like someone was observing your every decision, like you're playing a high-stakes game where the opponent knows all the rules, they can see everyone's cards?
And you don't even realize you're sitting at the table.
Exactly. Until the dealer asks for your ante. That is the exact architectural trap Strawberina wakes up to. And to understand the sheer atmospheric pressure of this moment, we have to contrast two very different physical spaces.
The precinct and the bedroom.
Right. So down at the precinct, the environment is suffocating by design. Pineapple Lisa and Mushroom Marv are in custody. They're sweating under these harsh, unyielding interrogation lights. And the detectives have deliberately spread crime scene photos across the table to create this, like, visual perimeter of guilt.
And the strategy is working flawlessly. The sources indicate they are completely spilling their guts.
Meanwhile, Strawberina is at home, physically isolated, just operating under the assumption that distance equals insulation. She believes the drywall of her bedroom is a functional barrier against the legal system.
Okay, let's unpack this. That phrase from the text, describing Lisa and Marv as turning into a full-on fruit puree,
Yeah.
that requires a closer look because it tells us exactly what kind of pressure cooker that interrogation room is.
Oh, for sure, because they aren't just talking, they're breaking down.
Exactly. When suspects are subjected to advanced interrogation techniques, the goal isn't just to extract a confession. The goal is to completely deconstruct the suspect's psychological framework.
Like the Reed technique, right?
Yeah, exactly like the Reed method. It relies on isolating the individual, maximizing the perceived evidence against them, and then minimizing the moral weight of their actions to offer an escape hatch.
So they don't just talk, their established loyalties just disintegrate.
Right. When they reach that puree stage, they lose their distinct shape. They blend into whatever narrative the detectives are aggressively pushing. Loyalty just evaporates in the face of self-preservation. I mean, they will offer up any associate, any friend to relieve the immediate crushing pressure of that room.
Wow. So knowing that Lisa and Marv are entirely broken down makes the initial piece of information Strawberryna receives so much more impactful. Amidst this catastrophic unspooling of the local underworld, Lisa and Marv provide the authorities with a very specific, carefully constructed detail about Strawberryna.
The last-minute setup detail.
Yes, they state on the record that she was a last-minute setup. They claim her presence at the event was a last-minute invitation paid for by Tamarind and Potato Keisha.
And what's fascinating here is the immediate physiological response this creates for Strawberryna. It's exactly what the informant is banking on.
Yeah, she thinks she's totally cleared.
When she reads that text from the unknown number, telling her that her name hasn't crossed their lips in an incriminating way, that she's officially categorized as just a last-minute setup, her central nervous system goes through a massive recalibration.
She physically collapses back onto her pillows.
She lets out a breath she didn't even realize she was holding. Her internal monologue immediately pivots to preserving her social capital. I mean, she thinks about how her wholesome reputation is technically intact with the law. She believes the narrative of the innocent bystander has completely held up under police scrutiny.
But I gotta say, I'm struggling to buy into her reaction here. I mean, if she's just this sweet, innocent entity caught in the crossfire of a sketchy underworld, why does she later turn out to possess a highly coveted digital file that a vengeful mob boss is willing to commit a literal home invasion to retrieve?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Is Strawberryna really as naive as she presents herself in this moment? Or is she an active player who just successfully dodged a bullet? Because the text paints her as incredibly relieved, but that relief feels suspiciously tied to avoiding a specific charge, not actual innocence.
You are hitting on the central tension of her character right there. Strawberryna acts as a highly unreliable narrator of her own moral standing.
Yeah, she's definitely hiding something.
The relief she feels is entirely rooted in how she is perceived by the bureaucratic machinery of the police force, not in her actual removal from the criminal ecosystem. I mean, the very fact that heavy hitters like Tamarind and Keisha financially sponsored her presence indicates she serves a specific valuable function within that underworld.
She's a piece on the board, whether she admits it or not.
Absolutely. But returning to the mechanics of the manipulation, her emotional state in that bedroom is the key. The informant has masterfully engineered a moment of profound, visceral relief.
Why give her that relief, though? Why not just keep her terrified?
Because the architecture of human terror requires a baseline of hope. If you want to truly devastate someone psychologically, you cannot keep them at a constant level of anxiety. They'll just numb out.
Oh, wow. They habituate to the fear.
Exactly. You have to give them a moment to feel safe, to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, to let their heart rate drop. You open up their defenses. Only when they are soft and relaxed can the true psychological warfare be effective.
That is so dark. And the terrifying reality of that text message is that this engineered feeling of safety lasts for precisely 1 second. Because immediately after her heart rate drops and she thinks she's clear of the legal threat, the rational part of her brain catches up to the logistical impossibility of what she is looking at.
The photo.
She is staring at a live photograph of a high-profile, ongoing police interrogation. And the obvious, deeply chilling question arises. How is a civilian receiving real-time updates and literal photographs from inside one of the most secure, restricted facilities in the city?
We have to evaluate the structural security of a precinct to understand the gravity of this breach. An interrogation room is a highly controlled, sterile environment.
It's not like a public lobby.
Not at all. Suspects are monitored via audio and video. Detectives are present. There is an acute institutional awareness of the chain of custody for evidence, especially regarding the crime scene photos that are visibly spread across the table in the picture Strawberryna receives.
So how does someone snap a pic without getting caught?
Well, to successfully capture and transmit a photo in that specific environment dictates one of two incredibly grim realities. Either the informant is physically standing in the room, perhaps one of the lead detectives or a guard positioned by the door, or they have completely unrestricted, unmonitored access to the precinct's closed-circuit security feeds.
Which would allow them to photograph a surveillance monitor in a separate, isolated room. Both of those scenarios require a level of brazenness that is just hard to comprehend. I mean, if they are physically in the room, they're pulling out a personal, untraceable cell phone, Framing a shot that includes both the sweating suspects and the sensitive evidentiary photos, and texting it out into the ether without any concern for being reprimanded by their colleagues.
It strongly suggests a culture of complicity.
Yeah, and if they're in the security room, it means the corruption isn't just localized to one bad apple in an interrogation room. It means the surveillance apparatus itself has been compromised and weaponized.
Consider the power dynamic this signals to the target. The informant is not just sending a picture. They are transmitting a philosophical statement.
What do you mean by that?
They are effectively communicating that the rules governing those criminals sweating under the lights and the rules governing the police officers conducting the interview simply do not apply to them. They operate entirely above the law, from directly inside the house of the law. Imagine the cognitive dissonance required to process that. The institution explicitly designed, funded, and empowered to protect you from predators has been infiltrated by a predator who is singularly focused on you.
It makes my skin crawl. And the syntax and tone of the text messages reinforce that predatory focus perfectly. The wording is meticulously chosen to destabilize.
Oh, the tone is so deliberate.
The text reads, and I quote, "Your friends are turning into a full-on fruit puree down here, Brina. They're singing like birds, but guess what? Your name hasn't crossed their lips."
It's drenched in dark, taunting humor.
It is, but the most insidious part is the nickname, calling her Brina. It implies a deeply disturbing level of false familiarity. It forces a kind of perverse intimacy into the interaction.
It really does.
They are communicating with the cadence of an old friend sharing a piece of juicy neighborhood gossip, while simultaneously providing cryptographic proof that they hold the power to dismantle her entire life.
That forced intimacy is a fundamental grooming and control tactic. By utilizing the nickname Brina, the informant is artificially collapsing the psychological distance between them. They are asserting a false closeness, claiming a position within her inner circle, while their actual identity remains entirely obscured behind an unknown number.
So they're playing friend and executioner at the same time.
Yes, and this creates a severe glitch in the brain's threat response system, specifically the amygdala. The victim's brain is simultaneously receiving a linguistic cue of safety and friendship, the casual nickname, the conversational tone, and a visual cue of catastrophic existential danger, the breach of a secure police facility.
And the brain just can't handle both at once.
It struggles to reconcile these two opposing signals simultaneously. It causes a kind of analytical paralysis, making it incredibly difficult for the victim to formulate a rational response, which keeps them perpetually off balance and reactive.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the digital intrusion, as terrifying as it is, only represents half of the informant's strategy. The psychological warfare bleeds out of the phone and into the physical space.
The artifacts in the room.
Yes. As Strawberina is paralyzed, trying to process this impossible text message, her eyes drift from the illuminated screen down to the floor of our bedroom. And there, resting on the floorboards, are a police jacket and a heavy metallic badge.
Left behind by the officer who drove her home.
Exactly. They were left behind by the supposedly nice, thoughtful officer who had personally driven her home from the chaotic scene earlier that evening.
In any forensic analysis of a stalking or intimidation case, the physical artifacts left at a scene are never just inanimate objects. They are a narrative. They are a physical manifestation of the perpetrator's intent.
I have to stop you there, though, because the text suggests Strawberina briefly wonders if leaving the jacket and badge was just a clumsy mistake. Is it possible we're overthinking the presence of the badge?
You think it might have been an accident?
Well, what if it's not a grand orchestrated strategy? What if it's just human error or sheer hubris from an officer who was tired at the end of a long shift? I mean, people lose things all the time.
To answer that, we have to look at the bureaucratic and cultural reality of law enforcement. A police badge is not a pair of sunglasses. It's not a set of car keys that slips out of a pocket. A badge is the literal and symbolic embodiment of a police officer's identity.
Right. It's their entire authority.
It represents their authority, their legal protections, their livelihood, and their state-sanctioned monopoly on the use of force. Losing a badge is a massive disciplinary event in any police department. It triggers internal investigations and severe reprimands.
So they wouldn't just casually leave it behind.
An officer is hyper-aware of where their badge is at all times. Therefore, the statistical probability of an officer accidentally dropping their most vital symbol of authority onto the floor of a civilian's private bedroom, purely by coincidence, at the exact moment a coordinated blackmail campaign begins, it is effectively zero. It cannot be human error. It must be tactical planning.
Which means the jacket and the badge are deliberate territorial markers.
Exactly. When you examine the psychology of aggressive intimidation, perpetrators frequently leave an item of personal significance in the victim's most private space. It is a nonverbal method of asserting dominance.
It's like marking their territory.
It says, I have access to your sanctuary. I was standing in your bedroom. I can breach this space whenever I choose. And the badge, in particular, amplifies this terror exponentially
Because it's the police.
because it is a symbol of state power. Leaving it on her floor subtly communicates that the officer's authority over her doesn't end at the precinct doors. His power extends directly into her private life. The law itself is resting on her bedroom floor, waiting to enforce its will.
I'm trying to piece together the timeline of this manipulation because the logistics are deeply unsettling. We have the seemingly benevolent officer who drove her home and deposited these items, and we have the anonymous informant texting real-time photos from the interrogation room.
Are they the same person?
Right. If we assume they are the same person, which the proximity and timing heavily suggest, it paints a horrifying picture of premeditation. The officer playing the empathetic protector on the ride home was entirely a performance.
A Trojan horse.
Yes. He was using that built-up trust simply to gain access to her house, plant these physical items as a psychological anchor, leave, return to the station, walk straight into the interrogation room, and initiate the text campaign. He planted the physical seed of terror in her room hours before he watered it with the digital threat.
It is a highly sophisticated predatory strategy. Consider how the human eye and brain work in tandem during a panic state. When she receives those terrifying reality-breaking texts, her eyes naturally scan her environment for threats.
And they land right on the badge.
Her gaze falls directly onto the physical reminder of the police presence in her room. The digital threat arriving through the ether and the physical threat resting on her floor merge into a single, inescapable reality.
So she connects the two instantly.
The officer who successfully disguised himself as a protector is violently recast in her mind as a predator. The safe haven of her bedroom is retroactively violated. She realizes, with crushing clarity, that she was never safe. She was simply being positioned on a chessboard without her knowledge.
And if the officer wanted to maintain any lingering illusion of being a helpful presence, the very next text message completely obliterates it. Just as she is staring at that heavy metal badge, processing the violation of her space, her phone buzzes again.
The pivot.
This is where the dynamic takes a massive pivot. The text reads, "Bad news, Brenna. Looks like the sour pickle wasn't the only one that had some of your sweet juices, and we have the pictures to prove it."
This raises an important question. The timing of this pivot is the crucial element to analyze. Why would the informant expend effort to relieve her anxiety regarding the immediate legal threat of the interrogation, specifically assuring her that Lisa and Marv aren't implicating her, only to instantly hit her with a devastating threat about scandalous photos and an entirely different, highly compromising situation involving the sour pickle?
Because the informant recognizes that legal threats and social threats operate on completely different axes. They are taking a sledgehammer to her reputation just after she mistakenly thought she had secured it.
This is the underlying structural mechanics of blackmail. We are seeing a textbook deployment of the good cop, bad cop routine, synthesized entirely through an anonymous text thread.
Good cop being the text about her not being implicated.
First, the manipulator demonstrates their capacity to protect her from the bureaucratic threat of the law. They provide the relief we discussed earlier. But a skilled manipulator understands that a comfortable victim is an uncooperative victim.
So they have to pull the rug out.
The absolute moment she feels that relief, they deploy the secondary payload. By proving they possess highly damaging, intimately personal evidence regarding the sour pickle and her sweet juices, they systematically strip Strawberina of any leverage she falsely believes she held.
They are violently reminding her that her prized, wholesome reputation is not a concrete fact. It is a fragile, manufactured construct that exists entirely at their whim. They control the narrative of her innocence.
Exactly. They hold the keys to her physical freedom regarding the police raid and the keys to her social destruction regarding the photographs.
I want to highlight a very specific, incredibly dangerous word used in that blackmail text. This message says, "We have the pictures to prove it." We, plural. It doesn't say, "I have the picture."
Right, the plural pronoun.
Does this imply that the informant isn't just a lone rogue cop operating a personal stalking campaign? Does that we indicate a broader institutional conspiracy? Are we looking at an entire faction within the department coordinating to corner this one specific target?
That simple two-letter pronoun is arguably the most terrifying part of the entire exchange. A lone stalker, even a well-armed one, is a localized danger that can theoretically be countered or reported.
You can call other cops.
Right. An institutional conspiracy, however, presents an insurmountable systemic threat. If we refers to multiple corrupt officers actively collaborating, or worse, a corrupt faction within the department working in tandem with elements of the criminal underworld, then Strawberina's isolation is absolute.
She isn't fighting a bad apple, she is fighting the orchard.
Exactly. Who exactly can she call for help if the department she needs to report the extortion to is the very we conducting the extortion? The bureaucratic avenues for survival are completely sealed off.
Realizing that every conventional avenue of escape is blocked, she does the only thing a trapped person can do in a moment of sheer, unadulterated panic. She engages with the threat, she grabs the phone and furiously types back into the void, "Who is this? Is this the officer who drove me home?"
And then the wait begins.
And then begins the wait. 3 minutes pass. It doesn't sound like a long time, but anyone who has ever stared at a screen while those 3 little typing dots bounce, stop, and bounce again, waiting for a response that will determine the trajectory of their life, knows it's its own form of agony.
What you are describing is time distortion, which is a highly effective tool in psychological abuse and coercive control.
How so?
Under extreme, acute stress, the brain's perception of time slows down dramatically as it attempts to process rapid-fire threats. Those 3 minutes of digital silence likely felt like 3 hours of suspended animation to Strawberina.
Oh, I bet.
The informant is intentionally making her wait. They are forcing her to stew in her own escalating anxiety. By dictating the pace of the digital interaction, they are reasserting their absolute control over the dynamic. When the informant finally deigns to respond, they pointedly refuse to answer her direct question. They don't confirm or deny if they are the officer who left the badge.
They just ignore the question entirely.
Instead, they assign themselves a specific moniker.
The response comes through, "Just consider me your guardian angel in blue, Strawberina."
The psychological weight of that title demands analysis because the irony is dense and intentionally cruel.
Guardian angel.
The archetypal concept of a guardian angel is a celestial entity assigned to protect, guide, and comfort a vulnerable person. They represent benevolence, selflessness, and divine watchfulness.
Which is the exact opposite of what this person is doing.
Exactly. By claiming this specific title, the informant is cloaking their malicious, controlling, predatory behavior in the sanctified language of divine protection. They are communicating a very clear message. I am the singular force standing between you and total destruction.
But the reality of their actions fundamentally contradicts the title. A genuine guardian angel does not extort their charge with compromising photographs of the sour pickle. A protector does not leave territorial markers on a bedroom floor to induce paranoia.
This is not protection. This is a predator demanding profound gratitude from their prey for not consuming them immediately.
It reminds me of the psychological mechanics behind Munchausen syndrome by proxy, but weaponized for the criminal underworld.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Right, because in those cases, a caregiver intentionally makes a dependent person deathly ill, specifically so the caregiver can play the role of the devoted, heroic savior who nurses them back to health. The informant is doing the exact same thing on a systemic level. They are infecting Strawberina's life with paralyzing, debilitating anxiety and legal jeopardy, explicitly so they can position themselves as the only available cure.
They are extorting her for a crisis they themselves engineered.
Exactly.
That analogy perfectly captures the pathology of the situation. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the guardian angel has meticulously architected this entire crisis from the shadows. They orchestrated the initial panic by feeding her the real-time, highly classified interrogation updates.
Right.
They cemented her isolation by threatening her social capital with the blackmail materials. And now, having completely destabilized her reality and severed her ties to normal support structures, they are positioning themselves as a sole point of salvation against an even more immediate kinetic threat.
Because the manipulation doesn't stop at the title. Right after crowning themselves her guardian angel, the informant drops the ultimate accelerating warning. They inform her that Potato Keisha knows Lisa and Marv are talking to the detectives. Keisha knows the police are mobilizing for a wider crackdown.
But here's the crucial part.
But the critical piece of information is this. Keisha believes that Strawberina is the confidential whistleblower who tipped off the cops and caused this entire catastrophic raid. And because of that belief, Keisha is on her way to Strawberina's physical location right now.
This is a textbook acceleration of the threat timeline. The informant is systematically tightening the noose around her. They utilize the abstract, bureaucratic threat of the law. They deployed the personal, social threat of blackmail. And now, they're introducing a visceral, kinetic, physical threat, Potato Keisha.
The mom boss herself.
And they have done it by deliberately framing Strawberina. We have to ask who planted the idea in Keisha's head that Strawberina was the informant.
Oh, it had to be the cop.
Given the total informational control the Guardian Angel has demonstrated thus far, it is highly probable, almost certain, that the corrupt officer intentionally leaked that false narrative to Keisha, specifically to trigger this violent confrontation.
So the theoretical threats are over. The psychological games and the bouncing typing dots are suddenly irrelevant because the abstract danger just manifested in the physical world. Before Strawberina can even begin to process the implications of the warning text, the violent reality of the underworld collides with the fragile drywall of her safe space.
The siege begins.
The scene hits its climax with loud, aggressive structural impacts at the front door downstairs.
The siege has officially begun. The transition from digital intimidation to physical assault is complete.
The voice shouting from the front porch is vividly described in the source material as thick, angry, and undeniably Potato Keisha. She is screaming through the wood, "I know you're in there, you little snitch. Open up before I mash this door down."
To understand the severity of this immediate threat, we need to analyze Potato Keisha's motivation and operational state. Keisha is not a low-level operator. She is a high-level player in this syndicate. She financed Strawberina's presence at the party.
She paid for the ticket, basically.
Yes. Now she is watching the precinct fill up with her associates who are rapidly turning into fruit puree under interrogation. Keisha is facing the total collapse of her enterprise and decades of incarceration. She is cornered, desperate, and operating entirely on sheer adrenaline and rage.
And a cornered boss is dangerous.
In the criminal ecosystem, a cornered boss with nothing left to lose is the most lethal kind of variable. She believes Strawberina betrayed the syndicate, but more importantly, she isn't just there for revenge. She wants something tangible retrieved.
She demands the digital file. Keisha is screaming for the digital file to be returned. So what does this all mean? This is the fulcrum upon which the entire narrative shifts for us as analysts.
Everything hinges on this file.
Throughout this entire ordeal, Strawberina has meticulously maintained the posture of the innocent victim, the wholesome entity tragically caught in the crossfire of bad actors. But the basic laws of criminal economics dictate that you do not possess a digital file that prompts a mob boss to risk a violent home invasion during an active police crackdown unless you are deeply, intrinsically involved in the game.
She is not innocent.
The existence of this file proves conclusively that Strawberina is not an innocent bystander. She controls a piece of highly dangerous, highly leveraged information. What is the nature of this file? Is it an encrypted ledger of transactions? Is it cryptographic proof of systemic corruption? Is it secondary blackmail material that threatens the syndicate's infrastructure?
The specific contents of the file are almost secondary to its function within the power economy of this universe. Whatever data it holds, it is the ultimate MacGuffin that drives the kinetic action of the plot. And the revelation of its existence synthesizes the true, underlying horror of Strawberina's trap.
The trap is perfectly designed.
When you map out the spatial and psychological geometry of her situation, you see an inescapable cage. She's physically trapped on the second floor of her home. The legitimate police force, the institution she would theoretically call to report a home invasion, is entirely occupied, processing the massive raid at the precinct.
So no one is coming to help her.
Exactly. A deeply corrupt insider, the Guardian Angel, is operating as a digital puppet master on her phone, controlling the narrative of her reputation and her legal status. And a violent, enraged syndicate boss is actively attempting to breach her front door to retrieve highly incriminating data.
She is completely enveloped. Every single vector of escape, legal, physical, and social, is blocked by a different, highly lethal threat.
And that is the exact architecture of absolute dependency. By mathematically directing Potato Keisha to the house at that specific moment, the informant has ensured that Strawberina can no longer remain passive.
She has to make a move.
She cannot ignore the text messages. She cannot simply lock her door and wait for morning. She is facing imminent physical violence, and the only entity who possesses total situational awareness, the only entity who seemingly holds the systemic power to intervene and stop the mob boss, is the very predator who is blackmailing her. The informant has made themselves indispensable to her survival.
The density of the escalation is just staggering. Let's trace the trajectory of what we have just unpacked. Within the span of a handful of text messages and a few ticks of the clock, the reality of the situation has inverted multiple times.
It's a complete whirlwind.
We started with a supposedly innocent target experiencing profound physiological relief because she avoided criminal charges. That relief was weaponized to reveal she is actually the victim of high-level institutional police corruption.
Right.
She was then extorted with the ghosts of her sour pickle past, forced to realize her most private space was violated by an officer leaving his badge as a totem of state power, and now she is the target of an imminent, violent home invasion by a desperate mob boss.
The terrifying efficiency of the mysterious informant is the primary takeaway here. Notice what they did not do. They did not use physical force against her directly. They did not break a window.
I didn't have to.
They utilized mundane physical objects, a jacket, a badge, a live photograph, and the meticulously timed release of classified information to completely deconstruct Strawberina's reality. They turned her desire for safety into a vulnerability, and they turned her physical home into a trap. They operate as a master tactician, leveraging the existing tensions of the underworld to do their kinetic work for them while they remain safely in the shadows.
And that leaves us staring into the void, asking who is actually manipulating the pieces on this board. We have analyzed the psychological forensic clues, the badge, the texts, the timing, but the true identity and ultimate goal of the guardian angel remains obscured. But I want to leave you with a theoretical model to consider.
A different perspective.
Yeah. What if our entire baseline assumption is flawed? What if the guardian angel in blue doesn't care about protecting Strawberina, and they don't care about taking down Potato Quiche's syndicate at all?
Recontextualizing the motive changes the entire nature of the crime.
Exactly. What if the precinct raid, the strategic blackmail, the territorial placement of the badge on the bedroom floor, and the perfectly timed warning texts? What if every single element was just a carefully orchestrated, multi-tiered manipulation designed for one singular purpose? Forcing Strawberina to voluntarily hand over that mysterious digital file directly to the corrupt officer.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Think about the leverage required. The officer cannot simply execute a warrant for a file that doesn't officially exist. They cannot just ask for it. But if they systematically terrify her with the crushing weight of the legal system, isolate her with the threat of social ruin, and then force her into the path of a kinetic threat like a desperate mob boss, she might willingly hand the file over to the officer in exchange for her life.
So the angel isn't fighting the potato.
The question isn't whether the angel is protecting her from the potato. The question is the angel using the potato as a blunt instrument to crack open the vault and extract the file?
It completely reframes the narrative. We are no longer looking at a story of a localized stalker exerting interpersonal dominance. We're looking at the mechanics of a highly elaborate systemic heist, where the victim herself is the vault and psychological terror is the drill.
It is a dynamic that should make you critically reevaluate anyone who inserts themselves into your life, claiming they are only there to help you navigate a crisis. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of manipulation. Keep your situational awareness sharp, keep your digital files heavily encrypted, and always critically examine the true motives of anyone demanding gratitude for being your guardian angel, especially if they leave the ultimate symbol of their power resting on your bedroom floor. Until next time, we'll see you in the deep end.
Darren on the beat.